Rest in peace, Moshe. I will not rest until I see with my own eyes seas of spilled blood rising over torn limbs, 1,000 Arab women weeping for their husbands, and 1,000 young men without limbs. These words were written in the personal diary of the widow of an Israeli pilot, a pilot who died on his very first combat mission over Syrian airspace. The date was May 5th. Wait, let me correct that. It was January 5th, 1973. That day, an A-4 Skyhawk fighter jet took off from Ramon Air Base and flew toward Syrian territory, tasked with striking a scientific research facility near the capital, Damascus. But the moment the aircraft entered Syrian airspace, anti-aircraft batteries positioned in the Golan Heights were already waiting. It took one guided missile. The jet exploded mid-air, and the pilot inside died instantly. The aircraft fell into Syrian territory, and what remained of the pilot's body fell with it into Syrian hands.
Days later, it was confirmed that the body belonged to a pilot named Moshe Perad, a veteran Zionist flyer of Austrian origin who had only been in Israel for a few months. And on his very first mission, the Syrian Air Force had taken him down. In the days after Moshe's death, his widow made herself a promise. She swore she would turn what remained of Moshe's charred memory into a meteor that would burn the Arab world, all of it. The Arabs who had broken her heart twice, once through Bassam and once through Moshe. I mention Bassam by name because he is the first major turning point in the life of Moshe's widow. Within just 3 months of Moshe's death, the Palestinian Liberation Front began suffering catastrophic losses. Targeted assassinations, one after another. The locations and movements of front leadership, previously unknown to anyone, were now fully visible to Israeli intelligence. And blood did flow, and limbs were scattered. Everywhere. And yet, none of it cooled the hatred burning inside her. She kept going. Until she reached the most dangerous and powerful commander in the entire Liberation Front, a man known as Ali Hassan Salameh, or as the world called him, the Red Prince. And when she transmitted word to Mossad that she had met the Red Prince, Mossad didn't believe her. They assumed she was exaggerating or confused because this man's face was unknown to the entire world. No photograph, no confirmed location. Reaching him was considered nearly impossible. But she had reached him through sheer intelligence and force of will. And from their very first meeting, she sketched his face from memory and transmitted it to Mossad, a single act that would change both her fate and his. If this is your first time here, I'm Amin the narrator. I cover everything strange and mysterious on this planet. And as always, before we begin, I want to remind you that we are still here, still ongoing. Don't let this video, even if you enjoy it, make you forget that every like and subscribe genuinely matters. Today, I'm telling you the story of Amina al-Mufti, the spy whose story, if it weren't documented and verified, you would dismiss as pure fiction. An Arab Muslim woman who became the most important Zionist intelligence asset in the history of that entity. January 12, 1939, Amina Dawood al-Mufti was born in Amman, the Jordanian capital. Amina was a Muslim Jordanian of Circassian heritage. Her father, Dawood, was among Jordan's wealthiest men, dealing in gold and jewelry, operating a diamond mine in Africa at a time when the diamond trade was exclusively controlled by the West. Her mother, Marshi, was a prominent figure in Jordanian society. She co-founded the Jordanian Women's Federation and represented Jordanian women at multiple international occasions, speaking 4 languages fluently, holding a university degree from a European institution. By any measure, this was a complete, accomplished, well-connected family. Amina was the youngest of 5 siblings, the pampered one. Everything she wanted, she was provided. She received the finest education money could access and continued her studies without interruption, until Bassam entered her life. Bassam, a Palestinian young man about whom very little is known beyond what Amina wrote in her own diaries. He was 3 years older than her. After emigrating to Jordan, he and his family settled in a modest house near Amina's school. He noticed her walking past every morning and every afternoon, and eventually they met. They developed what she describes as a warm, genuine romance and remained in that relationship until Amina reached her final year of secondary school. That was when Bassam disappeared from her life, suddenly, without warning, and this collapse destroyed her academically. She barely managed to pass her final exams.
Now, there are two versions of what actually happened with Bassam. I need to tell you both. The first says Bassam disappeared because he joined the Palestinian Liberation Front, concluding that his national duty came before Amina. That's the version her family told her. The second version, Amina's own version, says he was still present in her life daily, but he ended things because she was too attached, too possessive. And that is indeed Amina's version, because she wrote in her diaries that one day on her way to school, Bassam stopped her, handed her a letter, and walked away without a single word. Inside, he had written that she was psychologically unstable. He listed harsh criticisms of her behavior and said that because of how she acted, he was leaving her. After Bassam's actions, God forgive him, she began hating all Arabs. She writes in her diaries, "Had my uncle the general not intervened, I would not have passed my final exams. I was completely shattered." Which means she passed because of connections. Now, personally, I think all of this is just a convenient narrative, and she used Bassam as a hook to hang all her crimes on. The classic line of the criminal who says, "I was once a good person, but society turned me into this." Regardless, Amina passed her secondary exams, and with grades too low for any local university, her father decided to send her to Austria to study psychology. This was the year 1957. Amina was 18 years old at the time. And before she left, she was already fluent in 3 languages, so she had no difficulty adapting to life in Vienna. And since she was a teenager freshly emerging from an emotional rupture, she threw herself entirely into Western social life. Party to party. She started smoking, drinking. She writes in her diaries, "If not for those things, I would have ended my life from the pain Bassam caused me." In 1961, Amina returned to Jordan with her undergraduate degree. She stayed with her family for about a year, and during that year, Bassam sent her a wedding invitation. His wedding. And this sent her into a severe depressive spiral. Now, the fact that he sent her an invitation to his wedding is bizarre in itself. But as I've said, everything we know about this story comes from Amina's own diaries. And I'll give you my honest personal reading of this. At every wrong turn in her life, every crime she committed, she pointed to Bassam. And I'm starting to wonder whether Bassam even existed, or whether he was a character she invented to quiet her own conscience. Regardless, after receiving the wedding invitation, she returned to Austria to pursue postgraduate studies. And this is where the most significant transformation of Amina's life begins. Pay close attention, because the story starts here. When Amina returned and enrolled in a master's program in Vienna, she met another woman in her department. Her name was Sarah Parad. Sarah was an Austrian Jewish woman affiliated with the Zionist movement. Her brother was an Austrian civilian pilot named Moshe Parad, the exact same pilot I told you about at the beginning of this video. Amina met Moshe. She fell deeply in love with him, became entirely attached, and Bassam was forgotten entirely. She abandoned her studies. She spent her entire time with Moshe, and nobody knew. Her family were waiting anxiously for her to come home bearing a doctorate, and 5 years passed. When the time came, Amina asked Moshe to use his connections to help her with the degree situation, and he simply bought her one. A forged master's degree and a forged doctorate. She returned to Jordan in 1966, presenting herself as a fully qualified doctor. Her plan? Spend a few months in Jordan, then return to Vienna and continue her life with Moshe, or have him come to Jordan with a forged identity and build their life there together. She wanted independence from her family. Her plan was to open her own private clinic using the forged psychiatric doctorate. She even considered a surgical hospital, which Jordanian law at the time permitted without overly stringent verification.
But the Jordanian government required a set of documents verifying the authenticity of her credentials, and since everything she held was forged, she pivoted to Plan B. She told her family she needed to travel back to Vienna to retrieve the required paperwork. In 1967, she returned to Vienna, reunited with Moshe, and they decided together to marry. The problem: she was Muslim. He was Jewish. And here Bassam gets mentioned again, God forgive him, because she actually wrote in her diaries, "For me, marrying Moshe was an opportunity to erase anything that reminded me of Bassam. I didn't just hate Bassam. I came to hate the religion and the Arabs entirely. I found that Judaism was the perfect escape, a way to change everything that tied me to that contemptible man." She meant Bassam. By now, I think you understand the full picture of this woman. Amina went to the Shemoat Temple in Vienna, converted to Judaism, and in that same ceremony married Moshe. She became Annie Moshe. They left the temple together and went home to their life. For 4 years, no one knew anything. Throughout that time, she maintained communication with her family, telling them she had taken a university position and everything was fine. Until 1971, when she was exposed entirely by accident. Her mother was at a social gathering, boasting to the other women about her daughter studying at a Vienna university. One of the women at the gathering said, "My son is studying psychiatry at the same university. Ask your daughter to look out for him if he needs anything." The mother passed the message. The son checked. He came back. "There's no doctor by that name at this university." Word got back through the women's circle. The family began investigating and quickly uncovered the full truth about what their daughter had become. The family disowned her entirely. Her father swore he would kill her in the middle of Vienna if he found her. And this, right here, is where the second half of the story begins. Because of her genuine terror of her father, and she knew him well enough to know his threat was not empty, she asked Moshe that they relocate to Israel. Now here, there are again 2 versions. The first: she insisted on Israel purely out of fear for her life. The second: the entity was on the eve of the 1973 war and was calling all Jews to return to the so-called Promised Land and join the occupation army. Regardless of which version is accurate, in 1972, Moshe and Amina traveled to Israel. Moshe volunteered for the Air Force, despite being a civilian pilot his entire life. After a single month of nominal training, he flew his first and only mission, the one I described at the beginning of this video. And over that Syrian border, he was shot down. And with his death, the story of Amina al-Mufti truly began. After Moshe died, Amina made herself a vow. She would transform what was left of his charred memory into a weapon against every Arab. She volunteered to Mossad, which received her as nothing less than a divine gift. A 34-year-old woman, classically beautiful, holding a forged doctorate in psychiatry, but with genuine psychological training from years of real university study. Arab features, 3 passports, Jordanian, Austrian, Israeli, and most critically of all, a burning, all-consuming hatred of Arabs and Palestinians, rooted in Bassam and detonated by the loss of Moshe. A fury so deep that only blood could satisfy it. Over more than a month, Amina underwent intensive intelligence training at the hands of Mossad, learning to operate the Morse transmission device, how to photograph, document, and extract any category of intelligence. After training was complete, she crossed into Lebanon overland, because that was where the real work was. The Palestinian Liberation Front's operational base was in Lebanon, not Palestine. The plan? Rent an apartment far from the front's offices in a tourist district to avoid drawing attention. And what's striking is that her first target had nothing to do with the front directly. The plan was to seduce a simple telecom technician, someone who could give her access to anything she needed. So Amina cut her own telephone line, and when the technician arrived, a man named Maroon Al-Hayek, he walked straight into her trap. From their very first meeting, he was clay in her hands. Amina played him through money and affection, and Maroon gave her everything the entity could dream of: the front's phone numbers, their locations, the distribution of their personnel across the city. Within just 2 months, there were more than 20 assassination attempts against front members. The majority succeeded, and the sole source of every piece of intelligence enabling those strikes was lovesick Maroon. Amina took everything from him because she was willing to do whatever it took to satisfy the hatred inside her. Mossad then asked Amina to go deeper, to fully penetrate Palestinian society. And what happened next is something genuinely hard to believe. To execute that order, Amina volunteered at a clinic operating inside the Sabra refugee camp in Beirut. Amina was beautiful, charming, and refined to an extraordinary degree, and she held a forged doctorate in psychiatry. She was able to engage clinically and intelligently with every case that came before her. She went from being an anonymous volunteer off the street to the most important physician in the clinic, responsible for the psychological well-being not only of ordinary people, but of the leaders, operatives, and families of the Liberation Front. She reached a position where she had full clearance, authorized to enter any location, any camp, any headquarters without prior permission. She conducted psychological support sessions for the children of front commanders at their own residences. And the assassinations never stopped. Israeli aircraft was picking them off one by one. Investigations were ongoing. Everyone wanted to know who the traitor was, but Amina was the last person anyone could possibly suspect. She would conduct a psychological session in the morning for a commander's family, and at night transmit their location and every detail of their home to the entity. The aircraft would bomb it, and a few days later, she would return to provide psychological therapy to the children of the people she had just gotten killed. Cold, calculating, in cold blood, and no one suspected. She even transmitted the coordinates of the very clinic she worked in, and aircraft struck it, killing every doctor and nurse. Afterward, she went and sat in the rubble, weeping, cursing the oppressor. And that same night, she wrote in her diary the exact words that opened this video, vowing she would not stop until she saw rivers of blood and more torn limbs. Then, one day, a senior front official asked Amina to accompany him to meet someone at a specific location. They went to the Coral Beach Resort. Amina initially thought this official had personal intentions toward her, which, she notes, she wouldn't have objected to if it served her mission. But when they arrived, she sensed something genuinely significant was at play. In the lobby, she was introduced to a major front commander. She learned his name was Ali Hassan Salameh. Their meeting was casual. They discussed the clinic's work, the general state of affairs. Then the conversation ended, and immediately afterward, Amina transmitted everything via her device, and that same night, her Mossad handler contacted her and said, "I can't believe what you're telling me." Because from the very beginning, her primary mission had been to reach the Red Prince, Ali Hassan Salameh, and she had found him by accident. Mossad initially didn't believe it. The next day, her handler asked her to describe his appearance in enough detail for them to construct a composite. They assembled an approximate likeness, and after she confirmed additional details, they were certain she had genuinely met the Red Prince. The handler told her, "You have just met the most dangerous man on the face of the earth." After that meeting, Amina's intelligence output became extraordinary in its detail and breadth. Every piece of intelligence she obtained was transmitted. One day before the 1973 war, she informed Mossad that the front had received a large medical shipment from Romania. She told them the Red Prince was in Europe, most likely Belgium. She told them Georges Habash had arrived in Tunisia on a forged passport. She even told them Yasser Arafat was at home, not doing anything significant. She knew where everyone was and what they were doing. Mossad launched an operation targeting the Red Prince, codenamed Wrath of God. They had intelligence placing him at a hotel in Norway. Based on the photograph they had assembled and the sketch transmitted by Amina, they suspected a man at that hotel. They killed him. And the man they killed was a young Moroccan worker named Ahmed Bouchiki, an employee of that hotel. An innocent man.
That same day, Norwegian police arrested 6 of the operatives who had carried out the killing.
The incident became an international scandal and is remembered today as the Lillehammer affair. The strange irony? The Red Prince had actually been at that hotel, but he had managed to escape the operation and sent a message back to front leadership containing just 3 words: "I'm back. Burn them." He said this because the situation had reached a breaking point. They had already assassinated a front commander named Abu Iyad, striking his car just 20 meters after it moved. They didn't just know where he was, they knew exactly which vehicle he'd be in. Which means the intelligence was not just positional, it was granular, real-time, and personal. And so the Red Prince drew up a strict counterintelligence plan to identify the source of the leaks. By 1974, as the front's real battles escalated, Amina was operating with even greater sophistication. She was directly responsible for the collapse of multiple planned front operations, including operations codenamed Zarat, Shami, and Haria, where operatives preparing to execute those missions were neutralized before firing a single shot. Amina had obtained the full details of every operation in advance through Maroon, the lovesick telecom worker. During this period, she was going to the communications center daily, listening to calls, and transmitting in real time to Mossad. She maintained this for weeks, and in the truest sense, she paralyzed the front. Given the extraordinary volume of intelligence she had delivered, Mossad assigned her one final mission. They told her, "After this, you come home to Israel. God guide you." They said, "This mission will finish the front completely." The mission? Get inside the home of the Red Prince, Ali Hassan Salameh. After days of planning, Amina formally requested a direct meeting with Salameh. A week later, approval came. Operatives arrived at her office, took her, and transported her to the location. She didn't know where she was going. When they removed the blindfold, she recognized it immediately: the Coral Beach Resort. After a 5-minute conversation, Amina made a critical, fatal error. A single sentence that altered both their fates. Mid-conversation, she asked him, "How are your children doing? Do they still need psychological sessions?" The sentence might sound innocent, but Salameh continued the conversation naturally, though something in his expression shifted for a fraction of a second. And Amina, watching that moment, knew immediately she had destroyed everything. Shortly after, Salameh excused himself from the room. He returned 5 minutes later and continued the meeting as though nothing had happened. But Amina was counting every second because she knew Salameh had done something in those 5 minutes. She just didn't know what. Here's why that question was catastrophic. The Red Prince was publicly known to be married to Georgina Risk, the Miss Lebanon and Miss Universe winner. Publicly, he had no children with her. The guarded secret, known to almost no one, was that Georgina was his second wife. His first wife was Palestinian, and he had 3 children from her, whose existence and whereabouts were known only to an extremely small inner circle. The world believed he was simply married to Georgina with no children. His first wife, unknown. His children, invisible. So how did Amina know? Only 2 people knew. Salameh stepped out and immediately ordered his team to pull a full background file on Amina al-Mufti. The first thing they found, she was Jordanian, with a known family conflict, who had relocated to Austria. That evening, the meeting ended. He let her leave, acting as though nothing was wrong. But a front intelligence team was dispatched to Austria immediately to uncover her full history. And there they found everything. Her conversion to Judaism, her marriage to Moshe, and the fact that after his death, she had joined Mossad. Now let's return to what happened next. After the meeting ended, Amina went home and contacted Mossad immediately via her transmission device. She said she felt danger and suspected she had been exposed. Meanwhile, the Red Prince had formally requested that intelligence track her every movement. That day, all they knew was that she was Jordanian with a family conflict who had settled in Austria. The following morning, before the rest of her background arrived, Amina contacted Mossad at 10 a.m. saying she was in danger. Her handler told her, "Leave your apartment immediately. Take any taxi, weave through neighborhoods continuously. Keep moving until our operatives reach you and extract you to Israel." She left the building. She got into a taxi, and before the car could pull away, someone opened the door from outside, one of the Red Prince's men. He looked at her calmly and said, "Please come with us, quietly." October 15th, 1975. Amina entered the Palestinian intelligence offices. The Red Prince himself was waiting. And that day, he had her full file on the table before him, every documented detail. There is no need to describe what interrogation looks like, but I'll say this much. When intelligence services capture a traitor, the confession comes completely, down to the smallest, most trivial detail. After confessions, the first person taken into Palestinian intelligence custody was telecom worker Maroun al-Hayek. His accommodation there, 5 stars, plus some additional treatment. Along with several other assets she had been running, all arrested, Amina was transferred from the intelligence offices to a secret prison known only to 3 people: the Red Prince, his personal bodyguard, and the cell guard. Their intention was to hold her for the negotiations that would inevitably come, because a spy of her value would not simply be abandoned by Israel. Not out of love for her, they care nothing for individuals, but because abandoning her would send a message to every active asset that they are disposable. And Israel needed its agents to feel protected. That reassurance was their most powerful recruiting tool. Now, in the secret prison where she was held, there was only one guard assigned to her. His name was Ghassan al-Ghazawi, and Amina, with remarkable simplicity, convinced him she loved him. The man, in a misguided act of misplaced chivalry, walked her out of that prison. God help him. He believed she was wronged. She offered him the promise of a life in any country he dreamed of. But within 24 hours of their escape, both were recaptured. 3 days later, Ghassan faced trial. Amina was returned to confinement and remained there for 5 years. To spare you the full 5 years, negotiations between the front and the entity never stopped throughout that period. In 1980, this Zionist traitor, then 41 years old, was exchanged for 2 men of great stature and dignity, Mohammed Mahdi Beseso and William Nasser, both held in occupation prisons, both sentenced to life for resistance operations that had cost Zionist lives. The exchange took place in Cyprus under international mediation. Whether she eventually provided the entity with more intelligence or became a senior Mossad handler are stories invented by thriller writers. From 1980 to this day, no one knows a thing about her. But her end, like the end of any traitor, is almost certainly the ash heap of history. She died somewhere without a single human witness. That was today's story. I hope it was worth your time. If this kind of story moves you, watch the video on Heba Selim, considered the most dangerous Egyptian spy in history. Her story is very close to Amina al-Mufti's, but the key difference is that Amina's asset was a small telecom worker, while Heba's was a high-ranking military officer. Tell me in the comments what you think. Did Bassam really destroy this woman and turn her into what she became? Or is that nothing but empty narrative? I'm Amin the narrator. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one.